against is the care being evaluated. So it has to be a standard-based audit. Maybe I don't matter how to form standards or monitor it in use very shortly, but it has to be a standard-based audit. Unfortunately, during assessments, we will present them with as many as third.
तो हम लोगों को करना है अपने को ऑडिट,
Standard.
इसलिए ध्यान में रखो अपने डिपार्टमेंट का अपने को ही करना है.
Alright. So what is audit? Audit is based. It is evaluation of data, and where does that data come from? It comes from document. Means about nice. So what is the nice step? So then it tries to improve patient care. Like all how through systematic review of care. This is criteria, which are the standards, and the implementation. Number one, it is a QA, it's a quality improvement process. Number two, and comparing that data collected with explicit this completes the audit cycle. The change implementation completes. What is audited? Aspects of structure, process, and outcome are evaluated, and changes are implemented. Now the matter does not end there. After you've done a gap analysis, after collecting data on the current practice, and you realize that this is the gap, we are going to make these changes and close this gap, and you do implement those changes. Desired effect. If they are having the desired effect, you adopt them into your life. For tweaking for them to have the desired effect, then you and if you find that they are and go back to the plan. The adopted or adapted or abandoned. Considering the definition, I am making it simpler and simpler for you to understand. So what is it? It is a and what does it do? It critically analyzes the quality of care we are currently giving our patients. Entity, clinical cover, which every CEO is now fond of talking, every quality manager is. Clinical audit is the first thing. And clinical governance seeks to improve patient care. Organizational approach, not an individual approach, organizational approach to quality that integrates patient and their care. So everybody is involved in clinical governance. Audit is an important component. So less formal definition. What do we do with clinical audit? First is currently. How do we do it now? Then we compare it. implement the change.
अच्छा उसको बोलो किसी को बुला लेगा ना। हाँ जी ठीक।
Part of day-to-day activity like it is in the United Kingdom. What does it require? It requires developing a critical eye on what we are doing and how we are doing things correctly. And the aim is always the same, to improve things all the time. So why should we do clinical audit? So always want to improve, to seek for destination. You want to the number of times. There is no pot of gold at the end, there is no rainbow at the end, and there is no end. Therefore, we should continually try to audit them with a view to see, can you improve them further to make it better for the patient outcome? So, clinical audits basically are standard-based audits. It is not sufficient to meet them. It is essential to also surpass them, better them. And all
ओके ठीक है ठीक है
departments can be or should be taken up as topics of clinical audit because they are great.
अच्छा
Peer review or what it is popularly known as
ठीक है दे दो उसको आप 200 रुपये का आंसर। हाँ हाँ ठीक है साउंड भी नहीं आ रहा बरोबर और बीच बीच में लटक रहा है।
सर इससे अच्छा सबको स्लाइड शेयर कर देनी चाहिए।
दिल्ली
सर ग्रुप में स्लाइड शेयर कर दो।
उन्होंने वो भी नहीं बोला ना, यानी वो अपने को आवाज भी नहीं, अपन कैसा करते थे
नहीं रिकॉर्ड होगा क्या ये बात?
अपन रिकॉर्ड भी नहीं
वो प्रिंट भी नहीं निकल रही थी, प्रिंट भी नहीं।
बेसिक प्रॉब्लम होगा।
ये कैसा लग रहा है अपन चुरा लेंगे है ना सर? कहाँ शुरू है ये? दिल्ली में।
so we come back.
अपन ये ऐसे बहुत सारे लोग देख रहे हैं
हाँ,
ऑल ओवर इंडिया वालों के लिए
Zoom पे है ना सर? वहाँ पे लिखा है 30 people are online। उस वजह से बात
कहाँ पढ़ लिए रे?
ये 30 people 30 जगह पे है अपना
Defining clinical
उसमें
audit
से कपल
because
लोग
it
है।
is
अपना म्यूट कर आए ना देखो उनको आवाज
both slides are slides which I will have to read out.
वैसे
And I
चले
want it to be very clear. If you understand these things, then you will never make a mistake. What is that? Very often you I see the phone process, or something is this phone process.
ऐसे से बहुत कुछ समझ में नहीं आ रहा। मैंने जो सामने कोई खड़े रहे और बताए तो अपने को
इससे चाहिए तो डेफिनेशन से
कोई भी देखो ये सिर्फ कंसल्टेंट के लिए खरीदा बंदे एक भी कंसल्टेंट नहीं
एक भी नहीं क्या मीटिंग ही नहीं
हॉस्पिटल वालों को भी वही है।
All the time I've been asking for only one fact, and I hope there is something in mind.
कुछ नहीं चाहिए
सर खरीदने के पहले पूछने में आता है सिक्योरिटी की कौन कौन आएगा
सबने बोला यार हाँ
पहले आना है तो आने चाहिए ना सर आने बोला तो आने चाहिए ना
राजेश मैडम ने मना कर दिया।
वो लोग आएंगे नहीं संडे को क्यों रखा? संडे को कौन आएगा?
May sometimes be considered to be a legitimate
संडे छोड़ के आए किसी भी दिन आ जाते
सारे घूम घाम ले गए साउथ सर घूमने गए। सर की तो सर्जरी की नहीं आई।
साबुन बोला था आएंगे करके
सर वो
So at the end, standard
संडे को उनका
must
प्लानिंग
be
रहता है।
established.
नहीं आता संडे
और
साउथ
This is something that
अगर
we see
इमरजेंसी
very
नहीं
often.
देख पड़ती तो
Monitoring of clinical outcomes,
ऑडिट के लिए
also known as performance monitoring, should not be considered to be a clinical audit unless linked
ये देखो ये बैठी है ना तो
the linked activity then may be acceptable as clinical audit, but otherwise
सिर्फ वो
performance
वर्ड्स ऑडिट वर्ड समझना है
whether nurses are doing pain management correctly or whether they're managing the police character properly. These audits are some questions. These are only performance monitoring.
जब भी लटक गया
Done only by law. And
क्लियरिटी भी अच्छी नहीं आ रही है
because they do give us a
percent
to the methodology of treatment of patient. But they are not a substitute for standard-based clinical audit or criteria.
आज वो किसी राउंड में कर
What was doing from patient survey. So patient surveys are one of the most powerful tools for
सेकंड फ्लोर में
asking patients for their standards have been
क्या
met.
है ये
Not a
फिटनेस हो गया
these
ये
two. Now, coming patient survey. Every single
उसको आज रात को रिपेयरिंग देने का है फिर कुछ नहीं देना नहीं देना
in case there is a negative finding because of it. Now, I give one example. When in the process of
कहाँ जाऊँगा हॉस्पिटल आ गया
city of started and the CEO decided we want to send in two indicators to help him understand how good or bad that department functions. No sane person can make sense of doing that with indicators. So one might take him just for we understand how good or bad my So I've been talking since some time. So please understand the rest of the day we are only going to walk on. So please try and understand the audit side. That is the this slide may look slightly complicated to you, but it is not. I'll break. What are we trying to achieve? We have to specify standard. So what do we do? Perfectly okay. Carry on with that. If no, then why are we not achieving this? So we do a gap analysis. And then I think how can we make it better? By implementing
Yes sir. सर थर्ड फ्लोर पे रहने बंधन में हाँ हाँ चलिए
we make it better. Yes.
आ जाओ आप
Simplified audit
रिकॉर्ड नहीं
cycle.
कर सकते तो ऐसा कर रहे हैं डायरेक्टली बात हो से बस
And what is actually happening that is what is our process at the moment. And after doing the analysis, what changes are needed, implementing the change and monitoring.
जस्ट स्टार्ट हुआ सर 10 बजे तक 5:30 तक तो 10 मिनट आऊंगी
So clinical audit process. It's a simple 5-step process and today we are going to be seeing each of these 5 steps in detail. So, and on which you should be spending the maximum amount of time. If identify the problem, select a topic for clinical audit. Most important step in our business. Step 2, your standards. Nowadays standards are not only regulatory, people practice and then do a gap analysis against after comparing it to the standards and then make improvement. And we are going to see each of these 5 steps. Clinical audit,
agree to
you keep raising your
हाँ वहाँ पे लिख दूंगी by order कटी कर दूंगी ना
so you observe the practice and the standard, and then you come to me and further raise this and again you go up, then further raise this and again
सर फुल नाम क्यों नहीं है
सबके
we have seen certain terminology.
सर आए
कौन से सर है
गाड़ी सर
केस के लिए
is a separate entity in their own.
सर हमारी फोटोज लेना बाद में डालने के लिए कि हम लोग थे करके चाहे उसमें से थोड़ा से समझ करेंगे
ये ऐसा है जैसे
सर थाउजेंड्स में गए होंगे ना थाउजेंड्स में गए होंगे ना पैसे से
तो एक ही खरीदा है बहुत
We are trying to find out what is
तुमको मालूम है ये जो NABH वाले आते हैं इनको 3 लाख रुपए खर्चा लगता है अपने को
लगता ही है ना
to the
टोटल
फीस आना जाना खाना पीना और उनकी फीस जो रहती 1.5 लाख रुपए था
सर पर वो जो एक बार इस बार जो आए थे ना दोनों में बहुत ही ज्यादा थे बाबा
or what is
एक अच्छा था एक
नहीं कोई अच्छे नहीं थे बाबा कोई अच्छे नहीं
बहुत मेरे को तुमने बहुत परेशान किया लेकिन रुला दिया एकदम
Yeah,
अब मुझे पता है क्या
trying to
होता है
evaluate between
एक्चुअली मैं एवरी मंथ क्या करती हूँ एमटीपी के आते हैं ना किड्स एमटीपी का जो आता है मैं एनुअल
So here we are doing this. We are trying to break new ground, explore new. If at the end of the research we come to the conclusion that
अपने पास से अपने के कुछ नहीं दो
अरे ये अपने पास रहेगा
So after this,
ठीक है ना वैलिड क्वेश्चन ही पूछना था मैंने
and I evaluate that of all
आप संभाल लेना
patients presenting with January to December, to how many did I offer this better modality of treatment, that is PDCA, and it's not well. That is clinical. In the first week, PTC, emergency PTC. After that, seeing whether our current practice meets that set standard is clinical. I hope you understand the difference. And we're discovering the correct thing to do out of 2 or multiple things. We do not know. It's a new field. And audit is ensuring that the all I told you about the difference in clinical audit and research is now expressed in a tabular form. Right? So we come to the second one. Medical audit. Medical audit and medical audit. Insurance employee. So we now need to understand that medical audit and clinical audit are also 2 different terms. So for that, let us try and understand what is medical audit is nothing but peer. It is evaluating whether the correct term of treatment was given to the patient. Now, who can evaluate whether the correct treatment was given? Only other was given. MRD clerk, for example, would not understand whether the correct treatment was given. The registration clerk would not understand whether the correct treatment was given. Won't this the correct treatment was given to this patient or not, based upon certain parameters. Moreover, normally speaking, the doctor of the same specialty. So the real and with proper indication. For a physician patient would not know whether an MRI has been reported correctly. It's a medical officer and preferably doctors of the same specialty. What does it take? First to the patients. This talks only about doctors, not about anyone. Like all quality improvement processes, if they're not fault finding missions, they are fact finding missions. Is my own fault? It should not be taken as an opportunity to punish them, but it should be taken as an opportunity to train them so that they do not repeat the mistake ever again. It is not an external quality control method, it is an internal quality control method. And it is not other than a medical professional, preferably of the same specialty. So here, and like we found that people are being able to understand that what whether the eyes have been dotted and the teeth. If you pick up a consent form, does it contain the patient demographics? Is it signed by the person taking the consent? Does it have a proper date? Does it mention the expected complication? Is it signed by the patient? So you're only looking at whether all the columns have been built in properly. So when you pick up a case sheet, if you omit, you only check whether all the entries are complete. You do not at this moment talk about treatment is not to be commented on at this time. Only the completeness of the medical report is to be looked at. So therefore, non-medical person can and do usually perform this. Eight aspects are not and should not be checked, or even commented. And that is the medical preventable medical errors. So the WHO got interested in this aspect and they gave this job to the Institute of Medicine in their 1999 convention came up with a paper titled "To Urge Human Within a Safer Place."
Audit is an important tool to
Urge
reduce medical errors. What prevented was preventive, है ना? हर चीज डॉक्यूमेंटेड नहीं.
You only gave more tangible, achievable.
According to that, कर पाएंगे.
ये रिसर्च टाइप की है ना एक्चुअली. रिसर्च
रिसर्च जो है अपन आदमी लोगों को कर सकते हैं. ये अपन
Audit.
और
Documentation.
I think they gave a very good.
मतलब दोनों का डिफरेंस भी बताया.
All of us believe, all of us in here strongly believe that but we are only good. So mistakes do occur, and it is the systems which set us up to make these mistakes. Same Institute of Medicine did another survey in 2010. That is this. So the problem is multiplied and grown. And audit was an important tool to reduce the years ago. But now we've reduced it. Show you some. So overall medical interventions lead to a quarter of a million deaths in the US. The supposed
देखो records
is rampant. We all know that these are consequences of failed response medical activity or preventable medical care. The last line, that is, reduces public trust in the healthcare system, and this is what we are finding the current scenario. And we should all make attempts to regain this trust, and clinical audit is an important tool.
सर ये रिड्यूस पब्लिक ट्रस्ट इन हेल्थ केयर इसका क्या मीनिंग होगा अपने ऑडिट में? जो है रिड्यूस पब्लिक ट्रस्ट इन हेल्थ केयर इसका क्या यूज है ऑडिट में?
It is not a witch hunt.
reduce public trust in healthcare. जो हेल्थ केयर है बहुत सारे लोगों को उसके ऊपर ट्रस्ट नहीं है ना, लेकिन जब NABH रहा ये रहा वो रहा तो उनको ट्रस्ट रहता डॉक्यूमेंटेड रही चीजें.
The single greatest impediment to the prevention in the industry is that the
आदमी लोगों को इसके मेडिकल इसमें विश्वास नहीं है, इतना बाकी चीजों के ऊपर है ना. यहाँ पे आए तो मन में थोड़ा सस्पिशन रहता ही है कि बरोबर करेंगे कि नहीं ऑपरेशन, जाते कि नहीं लूट रहे.
बार-बार आके पूछते हैं ये डॉक्टर अच्छे हैं ना, ये डॉक्टर अच्छे हैं ना.
Ever since the time the first human became Earth, it cannot be monitored. Therefore, human error cannot be eliminated 100%. But we asking what
एक
is
आदि पेशेंट तुम्हारा खराब हो गया जैसे उसमें बताया इतने सारे बेड शोर हो गया, दूसरा वहाँ पे आदिवासी वालों को बताएगा कि अरे हॉस्पिटल बेड शोर हो गया, उससे पब्लिक ट्रस्ट कम होता है ना, उसको कैसे इम्प्रूवमेंट कर पाए कि लोगों का ट्रस्ट अपने ऊपर है. मेडिकल एरर
system within which humans work to make it safer and full.
कौन ने बोला कि
Professional accountability is creeping in very fast and I'm sure all of us.
no need
Lots of changing attitudes, rise of complaints, legal challenges, but however, all is not used. We need to try and retain and regain the trust of the patient. We need to move from left to right. Certain everything mistakes, we should not be scared about this aspect. We need to learn from our mistakes. Which Fordman had suggested in 1923. So who does audit benefit? It obviously does. Already everybody has understood this aspect. But we don't. Traceability, it improves the quality of service, and therefore it also benefits the organ and efficient use of resources, what every CEO likes to see it. Let's do the best outcome and best that they can deliver, usually as a group of healthcare professionals. So the overarching aim of conclusion of the inquiry. It is a cure. This measures current practice and outcomes against that. The record audits and research, and we should be aware of our differences between these terms. So in conclusion, clinical audit is all of these and benefits just healthcare industry. We come to the end of only the introduction. I hope you understand. Step one, that is preparing for audit and selection of topic. Spend the maximum amount of time on step one, because if you don't get it, then everybody's time and effort is going to be completely down. So, which are the different areas for which to be going through topic select?
सर हमने हिस्टेरेटॉमिक्स में कितने पेशेंट्स में कॉम्प्लिकेशन और उसका क्लिनिकल ऑडिट किया था, बट एक भी पेशेंट में कॉम्प्लिकेशन नहीं था.
One that we are talking about selection of topic. It has got 5 elements.
Evaluating user to process topic selection.
We touching on that. However, if we are touching on step 1 also, the clinical process. So, who are the users in a healthcare organization? Involve the patient in the process of clinical audit, because it is a quality improvement process. When we mention patient, we also mean the patient's attendance. Involve the patient directly in the clinical audit. Involve all clinical audit meetings. You cannot express everything in front of the patient. Group. Patient and attendants, though they form a very large how do we mean indirectly? By taking a feedback regularly, either telephonically, indirect users. But are these the only users in a healthcare organization? No, there are some direct users. To explain what is direct users, let me first give you an example. In an operation case is complex for everybody, if the time interval between two it's too short, then the infection comes. This malady, so it has to be optimal, and CDC has in 2 cases in the operation. So if you are trying to audit the users who are going to be there, the users are going to be the surgeons and the anesthetists. Now these surgeons and anesthetists can be included in the clinical audit team. They can be called, so they are direct users as compared to the patient who is an indirect. Direct users and there are indirect users, and they will be involved in the so all sources of information, these are the sources of information in any functioning hospital, and all of them I repeatedly tell you, all of them should be taken very seriously and will be taken up as topics for the next audit. They came out with a report after doing this audit. And the report said that everybody in the healthcare industry agreed that audit was wrong. And they were an integral part of the quality process to the report. When the same commission of health in clinical audit in response to incidents suddenly mic is coming. Can you please switch it off? Thank you. These are not generally considered and there was an attempt to sweep things up. Outcomes from the patient. So that was about the first element, that is involving users in the process. Now we come to element number 4. What are the necessary structures that we talk about? The moment we talk about providing a structure, we immediately what comes to pretty movement can be with a one-man job. Nothing can be done by one person. Point 5, that is, how do we form a team? What sort of people do we need in this team when we are talking about a team? There are the biggest marketing business of the world, Steve Jobs. And even he said the great thing in business are never done by one person, they are done by a teamwork. It's true of all quality teams, anywhere, in any industry. Know the process inside out, to know how to do every single step of it. So they need to be aware. And number 2, they need to be aware of the process which is going to be how it is current. For these calculations, per course, you will not find this quality in any. Therefore, and they will direct the process, they will steer
सर ये कुछ भी नहीं समझ रहा है
तो जो बोल रहा है ना सिर्फ वो समझ रहा है वो क्या बोल रहा है
calculation.
फॉर्मर टीम अभी जैसे क्वालिटी का काम करना है तो कम से कम 5-6 लोग रहना चाहिए उसमें देन ओनली काम होगा एक अकेले बिल्डअप तो भरोसे होगा हमने लक्ष्यता को भी लिया कि वो एक पार्ट ले सके और आईसीएम को भी लिया अभी तो पता था तो सपोर्ट करेंगे तो फायदा होगा है कि नहीं यहाँ पे तो देखो कोई सपोर्ट करने आए नहीं
Very small team who
अपने अगर प्रोसेस नहीं है ना एक्चुअली कुछ प्रोसेस नहीं है जैसे
प्रोसेस नहीं है
चल रहा है सर
so when you start moving for people means
डिस्क्रिप्शन में है क्लियरली बोला था कि उसमें केमिकल लिखो कैपिटल लिखो, फिर भी ENT डिपार्टमेंट की एएनसी जब वो असेसर आया उसने देखा ये जो है ऊपर नाम लिखा पेशेंट का और नीचे दवाइयाँ लिखी, बाकी कुछ नहीं लिखा नहीं, तो उसमें एनसी दिया था।
सर तुम्हारी डायरेक्ट किस चीज को लेके एनसी मिली है? एमटीपी का मुझे पता है।
हायर सेंटर में पेशेंट भेजते हैं जबकि भेजते नहीं है बंदे को।
सर आपको का
जनरल सर्जरी मेलकर सर और मार्टो का बरोबर प्रिस्क्रिप्शन ट्रेन का प्रिस्क्रिप्शन तो हमारा है देखो।
यूरो
हाँ उसमें भी वैसे लिखा था कि ये डिपार्टमेंट का होगा।
सर हमको टाइम दे देते थे उतना भी लेके बहुत है वो पता
हमारा
है
क्या होने सर हम क्या टाइम हमारा
हमको ऐसे पता नहीं है रिपोर्ट क्या लिखेंगे ऑफिसर में
ऐसे हमारे डिपार्टमेंट में
Why should
हमारे लिए कोई प्रिस्क्रिप्शन लिख लो ना
तो
हमारे
ऐसा नहीं कि आज के दिन ऑडिट पे पूरा नहीं लेना ऐसा नहीं है
बोल नहीं सकते।
तो मेरे पास मना पड़ता है देखना
not going to be very
मुझे
simple?
पता है सर क्या है क्या था बस जब वो आया ना एमटीपी को मतलब देखने के लिए तो मेरी क्या गलती हुई मैंने उनको बोलना चाहिए था कि ये जस्ट अभी जनवरी का है मैंने उनको मैंने उनको जनवरी का दिखाना चाहिए था मैंने उनको फेब का दिखा फेब का भी लास्ट वीक पूरा ब्लू लगा के टाइप करती हूँ तो उसको मैंने उनके लिए बोला था बस और वो एमटीपी का पता नहीं कैसे लिखेंगे विदाउट नेम वगैरह
Board and not know how to make calls. That is the time the cynic will come. Then we tweak this process slightly here and we do this and I'm sure we will get off. We get the champions. Correct. So at least one cynic will come. Cost. Okay. What about the lower left? Lower skill. People with poor skill level and poor attitude. Don't make positive. Calling times. Time of availability. Because remember, the champion high skill level and very positive attitude. Always anywhere in the world. Married to these two. So it is to keep this ego in check that we do at least one time. You are not the only persons into whom the company is making such huge profit. The sun is not shining out of your behind. You are only a group of people who is no doubt doing a very good job and there are other people to the best of. So your team is comprised of a few champions, very large group of hands, at least one son in at least one. At different stages, with different skills, the same person may not have all these skills. So, managerial, certain clinical, certain audit related, certain. So audit related.
ऐसे ही बच्चे
Normally it is found that there is a lack of training in audit team. You have made a start in this and you are undergoing a program to train the trainer for whatever here.
शायद जिन्होंने इस फील्ड में जो कोर्सेज वगैरह किए
And
हैं
motivate
उनके
them
लिए
to start doing the
मुझे
audit
लगता है
and increase their understanding to it.
ये सब डायरेक्टर लेवल पे है कंसल्टेंट लेवल
And we out
नहीं तो ग्रुप पे डाला जाता है कि वो भी अगर जो कंसल्टेंट है वो ये देख लीजिए इसकी वजह से हमारे एनसी में बात का चलती
इधर थोड़ी कितनी एनसी है सर
in the forum, frequency and meetings, etc. etc. So this EOR needs to be put down in black and white at the beginning. The goal of clinical audit, right, as you are at different stages of the clinical audit cycle, and it will not
आपको चार्ज
कौन सा आ जाओ
क्या होगा
मैं क्या हूँ मेरा
मास्क
भी
निकालो।
बोल।
सर्वर में आपके रोल नहीं है
प्रियो
ऐसे पोज देती ऐसे ही देती थोड़ा इधर देख के स्पीड की तरह बस तो ध्यान से देख
patient and staff environment is good. Number 2 is that the written
यार ये मुझे सेल्फी ही लेना नहीं आती है ऐसे ठीक है रक्षा रक्षा मुझे ठीक है
point 4 we see. Now we come to
नीचे
the meat of the doing this topic select. How to select the topic or what topic? We found a very funny state of the next statement that comes from the quality manager is, sir, you tell us what topic is. Sir, how am I, a person who has been here for exactly 2 days, able to identify third? Therefore, let us see on what topic to select. There are certain steps. What is the answer to all of this? 1, 2. Is the topic concerned of high cost or high risk? The answer to even one of this is yes. What is it? Just 3 questions are high
सर सफाई भी शॉपिंग भी घर का मैं कैसे कर सकता हूँ
If you complain about your cat in your waste time, but if you need to go, don't look at it. There is no evidence of serious service. If you go to I trust my body and evidence of serious. The third one is the work always
वो पड़ता है सर उसके बाद है
you this to you by the most what we have seen all of this what we have seen the most difficult to understand, comprehend and exploit are the air conditioning drive. They haven't changed since before.
जाऊँगी जाऊँगी आज
Must
नहीं
be
जाऊँगी
between
करो परसों चल भी रहे थे
there's no reason why.
हाँ जी सब ब्रेक चाय कॉफी नाश्ता
Having 20 operation theaters
पता
on the
नहीं है
first
मैं 9 बजे
and
से
3 of them
लंच भी नहीं किया
do you think that hospital is going to only to
आगे भी से करेंगे
no.
उसमें भी क्या रिकॉर्डिंग का जॉब इनको तो मिल
So the meeting guideline, and we have done away with this requirement of 20% and all its users, the size of the operational theatre should be big enough to accommodate the patient, the surgical staff, unit.
और ऐसे बकवास के सुनाई
It is cost, reason.
का मिल रहा था जो अपनी
Go
कॉन्फिडेंस
ahead. Is there then you are now in a national foreign project, even if it is not there, we can
डॉक्यूमेंट्स भेजते हैं उनके हस्बैंड और डॉक्यूमेंट भेजते रहते हैं जब भी जाती हूँ
but even if not,
हॉस्पिटल
it is
स्टे को लेके रहता ही
so
है
it
मुझे
is
पूछना
basically only 5.
तो ये न्यूरोपेडिया क्या है ये तो मैं तो बोलती कि बस सिंगल पावर का लगभग 100% पावर आने वाला है सर आएगा बस थोड़ा वो ऐसे भी नहीं मतलब खुद से भी बोलती है यार चलाओ वगैरह करके इच्छा शक्ति कम है थोड़ी विलीनेस रहना चाहिए
इच्छा शक्ति कम टेंशन सीकिंग होते हैं उसको
हाँ पूरे समय उसी
Change
पूरे समय प्लान की समझाया उसने
on the manufacturing.
सर समझ नहीं आ रहा है
ये सब जो है ना बड़े लोगों कंसल्टेंट लेवल के लोगों का ऐसा है जो पढ़ाते हैं ना जो तब पढ़ के आए और इसके पढ़ाते हैं
And there was this gentleman,
वरना
one
भी पार्टी मुझे अभी तक के वही लगा जो बहुत वास्ट है
मैंने कुछ नहीं किया
And we both got only in the year 2005, wherein we realized that yes, structure for
हाँ मीटिंग चालू में इधर ही हूँ थोड़ी देर बैठना मैं
and we gave this framework, we made a So when we were, now why is this important to us? This was a background here. So why is this important to us?
और तो 15-20 मिनट के बाद
Are prescriptive. That is, we do not tell you, none of the standards tells you, for example, that your hospital admission rate is 30. Or 40% or 50%, no, they don't. Or you need to have only 2 medication errors, or 20 medication errors, or 200 medication errors. No, they don't. Require an NABH to tell you to get it done, or enforce you to get it done, only because we cannot possibly function in an environment with out of norm, out. You will that number one, you are aware that it is. Number two, you are taking steps to follow that problem. And number three, whatever steps you are taking are having the desired effect. We know you cannot get a hospital a month. So at least you can make an attempt at getting off 30, then maybe 40, and that is all that matters. Then
यहाँ पे रिवाइज
your structures and processes, only believing that these two are put in place, all NABH during all audits, and your all audits, make a mistake about it. If it is an NABH audit, it's only an assessment. If it is a JCA audit, it is a survey. And if it is an ISO audit, it is an audit. So, returns. This is
निकाल के नीचे रख लो डेटा
Tomorrow.
वो तो बात भी कर
So,
कोई बात
what
नहीं।
can be audit?
हाँ बस हो गया
And outcome.
भारत को बोलना पड़ेगा
वो तो आएगा नहीं
तो स्लो चल रहा है स्लो चल रहा है
There is processing the inputs and outcomes. The log processing. Workshop on site. This will be first exercise that
सर रुकिए ना उसके ऊपर कुछ रखते हैं
that will
यहाँ पे देखिए
or come up with the answer. As a topic of your auditing, what is your organization? The color coding is going to be the topic of the present. This talks about patient health or serious disability. So obviously, it is an outcome.
इसको बुलाना भरत को
नहीं
Patient satisfied with current pain relief. So it's an outcome. Medication ordering has got to be a process. Aspirin for acute migraine infarction at discharge has got to be a process. Electronic clinical information. All this talks about
उस पे आगे नहीं आएगा
medication ordering process. Consistent with current guidelines process. During procedure outcome. Post-operative pulmonary bolus or DVT, you know. This talks about staff, so structure. Prophylactic antibiotic administration process.
हेलो हाँ मैं इधर भी आ रही थी मंथन में
Process.
वो यहाँ पे
So the committee significant to the action.
वही तो है
See, for COPD patients.
बाद में सबके एडमिशन में आते हैं बताते
So in 15 there were only 2
हैं
An example of topics of structure, process, outcome. So we should choose. Need to remember when you're choosing a topic is that normally speaking, you need to select the best process or the best practice. However, the best practice that brings about the form. If you measure outcome, you won't know how you got there. And if you measure process, you might not know what happened at the end of it. Therefore, you can audit processes. That is very good. Some more topics about which you can take up as topics for. Very good. Next step is you need to define the purpose and the object. So, why are you taking up this topic for technical audit, or what is the aim of it? So that is point 3. About the aim. You are making a beginning, and it is always a good idea to start on a positive note, optimistic. So when you are writing down, control of blood pressure in this group, geographic area, you can put the same thing as to improve control of blood pressure in this cohort of value you use to improve. So use the example of using these set of words are here. Which you are saying to evaluate the processes. You say to think. Now suppose you are talking about to improve mental. So the aim is not tangible, the purpose is not tangible. So what is tangible? That is the objective. The objective. Let these things to an example. The management of broken follows something is to be done as per something known as gold standard. You're evaluating the care that you are giving to asthmatics in your hospital. The standard you will compare your care of the goods. Presenting to another. Take up as measuring. So your gold standard mentions the whole. You will take up any 2 or maximum 3 points. The audit you find that yes, the 3 steps you have followed. Okay, right? Then you can do another audit and take the next. Otherwise, you will get lost. So, it mentions the whole audit, but why is it take up point 1? Was the SPO measured 50 seconds of which I Then it carries out the positive approach given and possibility. But we are taking up only at the first audit measuring. So I can always verify that yes, what is going to measure? Yes, no, yes, fine, yes, no, fine.
sir,
So these are objective which are the measurable part of the objective. Sorry.
क्योंकि यहाँ पे तो तारीख ऐसी दिखाई नहीं रहा है। हाँ, इसकी वेबसाइट पे देखा मैंने। पिछले साल नवंबर का 5 नवंबर। ये रिकॉर्डिंग हुआ ये 4000 परचेस कर सकते हैं।
यार तो परचेस करके भी दिखा रहे हैं। परचेस तो किए भाई मैंने 4700 रुपए भाई।
ऑनलाइन है तो इतना बेकार क्यों कर रहा है? मुझे समझ में नहीं आ रहा।
चाय कॉफी
कॉफी मंगा रहे थे? सर सैंडविच भी।
कार्ड मैडम और जिसने अरेंज किया वो इसलिए नहीं। मैं भी का असिस्टेंट। अरे हाउ तो खुद तो है पर जिसने वही क्या है तो हो गया। 2 में से तो आया था NABH का पॉइंट। और नहीं आई तो मेरे को तो मार के आगे पड़ा। लोग ही नहीं आए देखो यहाँ पे। सबने बोला था कल आने के लिए। देखो राजश्री मैडम गायब, कुंदन बड़ई सर गायब, राहुल साहू सर गायब।
सर संडे के दिन कौन आता है?
सब मैंने कंसल्टेंट ने लोगों को बोला था, उनकी बात नहीं मानी। कितने बड़े बड़े नाम थे। सोलंकी कहाँ गया?
अरे पानी पीने गए।
हेलीकॉप्टर बना दिए इसमें।
So first they talk to the manufacturers, who said that yes, we can put some
This is
small
the
amount
picture
of
tracking
somewhere
bullet holes on
but
allied
we cannot make the whole
planes that
plane.
encountered Nazi anti-aircraft firing
बता
WW2.
नाजी कौन है? नाजी क्या है? क्या समझ रहे हो? सीओ सर आया क्या? चाय कॉफी नाश्ता के लिए बोले थे ना यार आज के लिए। नहीं बोले?
Sir, रहने दो।
बाहर से बोले
हाँ?
बाहर से बोले
नहीं नहीं ऐसे बोले थे। तू चाय तो लेके आ। देखो मैं फोन से बात करवाता हूँ। जब हमने कल सीओ सर से बात करी थी, सीओ सर बोले मैं आता हूँ, मैं भी ज्वाइन करूँगा तुझे।
काफी तो बुलाओ यार, डॉक्टर को भी।
नहीं वो तो आने के लिए।
नहीं तो मैं शिवन करके को फोन कर देता हूँ।
अरे चाय कॉफी नाश्ता तो बोलो 5-6 लोग आए, लोगों के लिए कम से कम। ये लोग विदेश से बात कर रहे हैं, इसको बताएं क्यों बोलता है।
हाँ बोले ना हाँ
This was conveyed to the
ठीक है
manufacturers who did a feasibility study and then said yes, we can do it, not a problem.
हेलो ए भाई विदेश क्या चाहिए? कि चाय चाहिए, कॉफी चाहिए?
कॉफी चाय नाश्ता क्या चाहिए ना
Mathematicians,
पहले सैंडविच खाओ।
यहाँ से मंगवा की बात है।
ये बना दो
नहीं बनवाने और काफी ले आ।
happened to glass through
दो लोग आ रहे हैं अभी यार,
सैंडविच हम नहीं खाएंगे।
5-6 लोग।
the same
विदेश
हाँ राजा पानी
he came up with a conclusion.
नाश्ता ये सर को पूछना।
सैंडविच बेचता है ना सभी के लिए
मैंने
नहीं नहीं सभी के लिए कोई नहीं खाता।
कभी नहीं
फिर
खाई।
रहने को नहीं पता चला कि मुझे ही खड़ा
नहीं नहीं ऐसा नहीं यार, ऐसा मत।
मैं तो बिल नहीं लगाऊंगा कोई बात नहीं एक आध पीस ऐसे भी सही है हाँ बोलिए
The crashing
सिर्फ कॉफी में जाएंगे।
they put it in section to
तो
know
तीन प्लेट सैंडविच बनाना तुम लोग खा लो, हमने
which
खाते
would it is to water from
विदेश चाय बिस्किट दो पानी की बॉटल
और ये 2-3 सैंडविच
2-3 सैंडविच। और किसी को कुछ चाहिए होगा तो
वो सुबह से आइए खाना नहीं खाएंगे।
समोसा समोसा हो गए।
नहीं
which need to be
ये जब रिसर्च केस में पढ़ते थे ना तब था ये बायस वर्ड
and
वगैरह।
I will see that there are
मुझे याद नहीं आता।
text between
ये
controls
बायस
घर में सर के लिए चाय कॉफी नाश्ता
the text
पूछे तो भी आए बेचारे।
no
हाँ
patients with gunshots of thorax and not surviving to
कल रात को इतना झगड़ा हुआ हमारा,
therefore these are the parts that we
ये मीटिंग की और आज की ड्यूटी के लिए 4 सैंडविच लगातार।
अरे सर आपके लिए चाय नाश्ता कॉफी भेजूँ क्या? कहाँ पर है?
हाँ, उसके संडे
अच्छा।
ड्यूटी लगा दी।
तो चाय कॉफी
बनवाना
we
भी
are
होगा।
trying to climb this pyramid which is based on salt.
होम मिनिस्टर
चलिए ठीक है।
This table of the academics of
सही है ना सर, अगर टाइम ही नहीं पाएंगे बच्चों को मैम को तो कैसे चलेगा?
10-12
किसका झगड़ा हुआ?
होम मिनिस्टर से।
कौन हो
But the final percent from college to wisdom
पिछली बार इनने उधर लिए थे।
to be done by yourself.
हमारा वर्कशॉप
कोऑर्डिनेशन।
इसके पहले वर्कशॉप में भी सर ही थे। मैंने जैसे ही सर को बताया पूरे सर को 2021 के वर्कशॉप में भी एक्सीडेंट से लगा कि तुरंत छुट्टी को फोन।
हेलो क्या हो गया?
काम करा तो बाकी कुछ नहीं किया।
क्यों?
मुझे ना
अरे वो चादर दोषी ने पकड़ लिया था, देखो बता निकाली थी और से उसने पकड़ ली नहीं था, उसी का तो बन गया।
More technical
कौन गया था?
पार्ट ऑन स्टैंडर्ड
काफी ऑप्शन चलेगा पार्ट में।
सर मैं ऊपर से जा रहा है नहीं।
पेपर में कुछ ऐसे पेपर में रहता है।
मुझे लगा कितना अच्छा लेक्चर है, मतलब कि बुक लिख के पढ़ने पूरा लिखूंगी करके कुछ भी नहीं लिखा है।
So before all of you start meetings,
कारपेंटिंग नहीं आता।
मतलब पंखुड़ी
in
भी
case you
नहीं
want to
बोला।
have,
अरे
I'm
मामा
not going to take a break, you can ask for a cup of tea to the university and go ahead and repeat yourself up. Because this part is going to require some concentration. That is why we are taking it now. And then of the morning we get forward it. And of course the last part is very, very interesting. That is making it sustain into it.
अरे क्या हुआ फिर?
जैन आई थी मिलने के लिए। जैन आई थी मिलने के लिए।
हेलो
So the step
कौन सा
one
वीडियो है?
step two we talk about, but we go on to step three, that is observe the color patterns. data collection of the
अच्छा वो उसको उधर उधर पे कहाँ से पहुँच गया उधर से हाँ
So we start with data collection. So how much data you collect?
ऐसा
See, when I was giving an example about
तो आपने कितने लोगों को दिखाया
select two,
अच्छा क्या बोले
very now say select 4 or 5, because I want you to arrive at a conclusion.
अरे क्या सस्पिशियस रखा है तुम लोगों को समझ नहीं आ रहा है दो दिन से क्लियरिटी मिल नहीं रही पहले दिवाली तुम्हारा नंबर देने की तैयारी है अब तुम्हारा से कम्युनिकेशन नहीं हो पा रहा है
Okay, I think they to collect too much data, but do not collect too much data.
अब मेरे घर से एक
Collect just sufficient data. Do not get
क्योंकि नेक्स्ट पूरे 8 दिन निकल जाएंगे तो फिर से नहीं हो पाएंगे
do not come in.
Yes.
Do a single aspect of the case. There's no collecting down the API of the case. But then everybody reports to zero. Okay, keep doing another audit and another audit and another audit. Keep improving the process gradually. These things all manageable by sequence.
सर ये कि जैन पेशेंट इसको मैंने जो अपन क्वाइरी मैलिग्नेंसी
The
की
user group I already told you earlier.
बकायदा हर संडे मेरे बारे में पूछते हुए मिलने आ जाते हैं वो जैन नहीं क्या सर
All healthcare professionals
नाम याद नहीं आ रहा
involved in
पेशेंट
training.
का याद नहीं आ रहा
Because they will be participating in various groups in data collection, audit and calculation.
उनके हस्बैंड को बोला मैंने
The time period over which the data is to be collected in each case.
ये वाले से
The entire audit cycle needs to be
आपकी
charted
पहचान है
out
ना
in
ये
something
कि वो
more
शुरू
than
करी
chart.
शायद ये लास्ट सेकंड की मुझे लास्ट है पता नहीं
That could describe the various stages of the project. So the data collection period has to be specified from the outset. Because we do not want people collecting data all through. And here you are already doing the calculation and then more data. The whole idea is we need to limit the amount of data so that we are able to arrive at a So, coming to data, there are two types of data. Qualitative data and quantitative. Qualitative data is also qualitative data is also known as soft data. So what is quantitative data or what is hard data? Hard data is that data in which there is no possibility of any mistake at the time that the respondent responds, if the reporter records, if the evaluator evaluates the calculations. There is no chance of a mistake at any transition. So which is the data? This is data in which the answer is one of the three. Yes, no, no. So here there is no chance of making a mistake. A yes will stay a yes will stay a yes. A don't know will stay a don't know will stay.
कलेक्टर सेलिस को उठा कर भी
Nobody can make a mistake.
दिखा
So that is hard data.
वहाँ बता दो कुछ
नहीं नहीं वो हर बार सर नहीं हो सकता
As
क्योंकि ऊपर
many
जी लिख के आया हुआ है
hard data as possible. So that there is no possibility of any mistake at any stage.
डीजीएन
So we have to
देखो ये ऐसे अच्छा मतलब अपन सेलेंस्ट्रा हॉस्पिटल अगर वहाँ पे आना चाहिए तो डी के आना चाहिए था डॉक्टर को खड़ा कर ये डॉक्टर शैलेश कोई तो भी अलग ही सर में
डॉक्टर सेलिस गुड़ खाते होगा
ये वो श्रीकांत सर है
which is this data. This is the data which falls to a conclusion of the business model.
यही भी बची होती है ग्रीष्मा
Are you likely to put it for any of your friends and relatives?
उसको क्या मैनेज करेंगे
Yes,
इसको
no, no. Okay, no problem.
अरे अपने लोगों ने बोला था जो अपने कंसल्टेंट लोग हैं कि क्लिनिकल ऑडिट क्या है करके इसके बारे में जानकारी चाहिए तो अपन ने उनकी जानकारी की जब वहाँ पे अपने प्रिंसिपल सर को रमेश सर कुंदन सर डीसी वगैरह के सब लोगों को लाया था तब उन्होंने क्वालिटी का ऑडिट ऐसा तो अपन इनसे हायर करके इन लोगों को सिखाएंगे अपन लोग को लोग भी रहता था जो क्रिटिकल केयर के पेशेंट देखते हैं जो ऑपरेशन करते हैं उनकी लेते हैं अपन लोग भी ठीक है
data needs to be collected. This is a good point to address it at the outset before you start collecting data. So you draw a chart like this, and if any of your data, you have data item on one side and you have these standards on the other axis. So if any of the data item does not tick even one of these standards, then you may not collect them.
सर आज आपके अंडर कौन सा सर्जरी हुआ?
Like
सर का डायग्नोस्टिक ब्लड टेस्ट
कौन सा?
डायग्नोस्टिक ब्लड
किसका?
सर्विकल सर्विकल तो
नहीं मुझे राइट से दिखे तो
हमारा हम कभी देख सकते हैं कोई दूसरा ये नहीं रहता बुधवार है शुक्रवार है सब अभी कभी से कहीं नहीं देख सकते
okay, we will somehow, as a surgeon, somehow it has been found that the most difficult collaborators to operate in India are an alert Kashmiri male. Don't ask me why, nobody is able to find an answer, but we have found that technically the hardest. Alert Kashmiri male. So when I'm doing a audit on surgery is a national capital region of Delhi. National capital region of Delhi comprises Delhi, Noida, Faridabad, Gurgaon, these areas. That's it. So I start with the data items. Name, yes, name is important for me because if the name is Raina, it means Kashmiri, and either Kashmiri name also has very many come to mind. So Raina means Kashmiri, Rao could be South Indian, Patel could be Gujarati, and a Saitya. So D is
पेशेंट का देख लिया उसका डिस्क्रिप्शन
yes, because Kashmiri
एमएनसी का
is very important
उसको देखेंगे
to capture. Address, global address. It has got no importance for me because the Raina could be living in Hyderabad, a Raina could be living in South Delhi, a Raina could be living in Noida, a Rao could be living in North Delhi. So local address is more absolutely no relevancy. Therefore, I need not capture it except for demographic purposes. So that is what I mean, that if your data item does not take any of these standards, then do not capture that data item.
ये कितना इम्पोर्टेंट है कि ऑडिट बनाएंगे किसी ने मुझे बताया नहीं कि फॉर्मेट क्या है कि डॉक्यूमेंट से फॉर्मेट आ रहा है
One
तो
of
मुझे
the
बताया
other form or register maintained
तेरे लेवल का काम ही नहीं है
here. There are a number of places where
इसके
we
लिए
have
किसी और को हायर करना चाहिए
you only have to cull it out there or extract it. There are certain databases you only need to identify
इससे
and
पहले कितने
extract
बार
it.
एमसी मिली है ऑडिट में इससे पहले
ऑडिट इस पे
नहीं मतलब यहाँ पे हॉस्पिटल पे
If it has not been
70 72
इथिकल भी मिली है एक टाइम
ये क्लिनिकल ऑडिट में मतलब ये पहली बार मिला है इससे पहले
इसके पहले भी किया
that is already adequate.
100% भी करेंगे ना फिर भी एक तो एनसी मिल रही है ना सर?
So we come to this problem. Retrospective study versus prospective study.
क्योंकि वो लोग वही मांगते हैं जो अपने पास नहीं
Well,
रहता
you do whichever one you like, that is the problem. Be aware of the pitfalls in each. When you do
अपने
your
आप के
retrospective
थॉमस
study, be
की
aware of
थी
the
पंजाब वगैरह में नहीं ऐसा गोलमाल करते हैं एनएच में
So when you
सब
put
कुछ
out
गलत
the
गलत पूरा ऐसा बना के रखते
start
हैं
recording data,
पंजाब वगैरह में
very often what you are doing is you
पूरा
are the
एकदम
chart
पूरा डाटा वाटा ये सब पूरा फेक हुए
recording data which is
उधर से क्या होगा क्या नहीं पता नहीं
so that stage
पेशेंट उतने
very
एडमिट रहते भी है कि कई लोग फेक फाइल्स बनाते हैं
oh, because this antibiotic given to this person. That is not what you are evaluating. You are evaluating number one, was an antibiotic given and was the correct antibiotic given at the correct time. That is all. You are not discussing which antibiotic to give. So care aspects are not to be commented on when you do the retrospective data. Retrospective data collection, they recommend and for example, in a handwriting,
सर
when the
सर 5 बजे बंद करने के लिए
the
Yeah.
contractual
हाँ,
maintenance.
पे तो क्या
The moment the IT walks away from the one,
मैं कब तक
so that anything of bias has to be kept in mind. Prospective maintenance.
सर बोले कि मैं नेटवर्क में वन से दूंगा सेपर जो दूंगा
Whole collect of the data. You remember the rats?
ये हम सबको तो सर्जिकल साइड इंजेक्शन हो गया एक ही हफ्ते में हमको पता चला हमने बंद कर रखा है
They will go over the
सर जितने भी ऑपरेटर सबको पसंद है जितने भी ऑपरेटर सबको पसंद है काय को देंगे फिर हम पेशेंट का नुकसान करेंगे
So we come to this.
और उससे कम में आता है
और ऑर्डर के साथ लेने का
NABH वाले से ये मतलब ये तुम्हारा लोग डाटा से बोले तुम फॉरेन कंट्री से उठा के लाते डाटा और हमको सिखाते हो
When you start talking
वहाँ
about
का जमा नहीं चलता मैं यहाँ देता हूँ जो करना करो हमारा जो डाटा है वो 6 साल का हमने सिर्फ देख लिया है उसका 2 महीने में पूरा केस फाइल बना और NABH
मेरे आर्टिस्ट सर जो आए थे ना मीटिंग में जो बकवास में भी आर्टिस्ट की बात है सब ने ये ऐसी बातें करना था कि आर्टिकल का कोई इम्पोर्टेंस ही ना हो वहाँ पर बुद्धिज्म का कोई इम्पोर्टेंस ही नहीं बॉडी वो वैसा बोल रहा था कि वो ये ऐसा कुछ नहीं था वैसा नहीं था वो सर बोले अगर हॉस्पिटल में इन्फेक्टेड हो गए कोई पेशेंट आया तो क्या मैंने उसको विदाउट इसको बहुत बहस की है था कि तुम पहले इंफेक्शन कंट्रोल करो ना अगर तुम इंफेक्शन कंट्रोल करोगे तो तुमको एंटीबायोटिक देने की जरूरत ही नहीं पड़ेगी सो बच्चा आप एंटीबायोटिक बोले यहाँ पर हाथ देने लगा तो मैंने रिकॉर्ड निकाला था ना अपने आप तो अपने यहाँ पे ऐसा एंटीबायोटिक खतरनाक सकता है तो देखते रह गया बोले साला यहाँ पे सेकेंड स्टेज के एंटीबायोटिक चालू है
और रूटीन यूज कर रहे हैं
ऐसा होगा कि ऑपरेशन वाले तब कंसर्न और जब पेशेंट का ऑपरेट होता है तो फिर कंसर्न इसके तुम्हारे ऑपरेशन से पेशेंट को इंफेक्शन हो गया तो पता चलेगा ऐसा होता है अगर आप लोग बोलते हैं बाहर से इंजेक्शन लेके आया है 25 से कल्चर हार्ट से सर्जरी होती है तो कल्चर कंपनसेट अभी अगर दूसरी को बिठा दे अगर उसमें कल्चर नहीं गिराया और पेशेंट को
नहीं अपने आत्मा को क्या करें
मुझे इनको लगता है कि कंपनी वाले अपने साथ में ये अथॉराइज नहीं करेंगे
to sample size and sample methods. A census is probably the only study on which the sample size is understood. Otherwise, it is physically impossible to do 100%. Availability of resources sets the upper limit.
भले नहीं जाती है ये जनरेट करने कोई फायदा नहीं जिस दिन ये कंपनी को रेटिंग है यूजिंग को बोलेंगे कि यार यहाँ से स्टार्टिंग
Minimum distance. Therefore, you have to sample size make the decrease.
बस करा लेना बस करा लेना मैं कम इसमें कर देता हूँ बस करा लेकिन दूसरा ऑप्शन का एक अच्छा है ना कि जो भी थोड़ा सा पैसे ऐसे वाला जो भेजा ना यहाँ पे बर्ड ना भेजा तो इसको कर देते नहीं तो भगा देते J1 पेशेंट का सब
stage do you address the size of
बहुत पहले ऐसा वैसा सब नहीं पता था गाँव से
chart stage,
नहीं
or even at the calculation stage, anyway. Mainly it is a big kind. So,
आराम नहीं पड़ता
first we talk about sample size. How we calculate sample size? There are many methods of the integrated meetings about these cases. First, there are three methods of calculating sample size. One is Euler formula. This is the word of the number two is ready-made tables.
रमेश सर को तो समझा नहीं आप
ये बहुत मेरे को असली जो बात समझनी है वो अभी तक आई नहीं है। डेथ हो जाती है, मेरे को डेथ का कहाँ से ऑडिट अभी उसमें 5-6 किसी की डेथ हो गई।
जब यहाँ पे आदमी खड़े रहेंगे ना वो बताएगा और अपने बस में दिमाग में कोई क्वेरी करेंगे तब की सही है हर एग्जांपल बोल रहा हूँ ये तुम अभी YouTube पे जाओ YouTube पे ऑडिट का डालो उसको भी एक लेक्चर देने वाला मिल जाएगा तुमको सही ये चीज बता हाउ टू केस ऑडिट हाउ टू केस क्लिनिकल ऑडिट YouTube पे डाले तो वैसे मिल जाता है
N means the sample size. State means
सैंपल साइज मतलब अपन ने कितने लोगों की स्टडी देखा है और उस पे अपन करने वाले हैं।
ये मैंने पढ़ा है सर, एक्चुअली रिसर्च वाले सब्जेक्ट था ना हमको था उसमें सैंपल साइज वगैरह 30 का सैंपल साइज लेना है।
बाकी चार कुछ लिए क्या है
कैसे
पानी चार मीटिंग लेके आए
जाने दो, पता चला मेरा पेट दर्द ना हो जाए मुझे ऐसे देंगे मन से नहीं देंगे तो है ना सर कुछ बता नहीं सकते।
So this is the equation given. Here you will see that mean is given as 150, standard deviation of 30, sampling 5 milligrams.
दर्शन था आगे से बता दो पीते पर ना कुछ ना
Standard deviation is 32.
तो चावल के दिन में ना
हेलो अरे वो रितेश को भेजिए चाय कॉफी नाश्ता लेके
Given as 5.
ये हाफ में पानी की बॉटल भी ला रही
So taking that same formula, substituting these values, you get this equation. Very simple.
मैं जाते बराबर पता है सर मैं जाते बराबर मुझे क्या मला काय झालं म्हटलं इतकी चुकी आहे म्हणते पण काहीच बोलली नाही लगेच बाहेर त्याच्या रूमच्या
It is permissible to use the help of a biostatistician. So use of software. These are the examples of software which are available and used. SPSS is the one which is most widely used, but you can use any one. Now, if you get these things
जब अपन बोलेंगे ना एक आध बार बोले जेम्स को ले तब फिर वो एकदम आपको जाएंगे
there are ready-made tables like this available on the net. We just pick up any
आपण
table.
उसको
Now,
बोल सकते थे ना
let's take precision level
उसका साला है
that is
उसका साला है दादा
आपण उसको ऐसे बोल सकते थे ना ऑपरेशन जो है होतच नाही असं बाकी वो ऐसे बोल सकते थे
the sample size required in the read oxygen is 664 and if confidence level drops to 95
क्या बता रहे हैं
sample size drops to 385 and if it drops to 90% it drops to 271. So what does this signify? This signifies number one, as the precision increases the sample size increases. As the confidence level increases the sample size increases. So now
सर कल गए थे शेंबेकर सर के फार्म हाउस पे 4-5 लोग
what is it saying? That incidence rate of disease to within 10% of the true value with 95%. So 10%
उसके लिए मैंने गुप्ता सर को पहले ना शिकायत सर को बता दिया, ठीक है? जो नाइट में उनको बताना चाहिए किसने बोला, बोले हम कैसे ऑर्डर शेयर बोले कि पेशेंट वापस नहीं जाना चाहिए, कुबड़े सर ने बोला है मुझे, इसलिए बता दिया, खुद के मन से कुछ नहीं करके बोला है। फिर वो भी मुझे एक शब्द बोल सकते थे ना, तू मैसेज डाल दे करके मैं डाल देती थी, उन्हें शब्द सर को इन्फॉर्म किया। सर बोलते हैं कि क्या हुआ बोलते, मैंने बोला कुछ हुआ नहीं है, बस कुबड़े सर मैडम नहीं है तो हम सीजी जिसके WC के स्पेशल नहीं लेने वाले डिलीवरी इसके लिए वगैरह, तो ठीक है बोले कि मैसेज डाल में डाल, अगर डिलीवरी गुप्ता सर मुझे बोलते मैं डाल सकती थी ना, चीज़ें क्यों कॉम्प्लिकेटेड करना।
the size of 10 per population of 100 might be. If the population increases to 1,000, then you need to increase. So as population increases, and incidence increases, as confidence level is as accuracy increases, sample size increases. You think to remember what accuracy is. Plus, means a range of 90 to 100. Plus minus 2.5%.
किसको भेज रहा है?
Plus minus 5%.
वहाँ पे सीलिंग लगाना है, लाइटिंग लगाना, थोड़ा दिमाग का काम है।
So sample size now after having studied,
कोई बोर्ड हटाना है, वो
even a doctor is very straight question or being related to some target. So really as medical,
अगर हम लोग बोले तो उसको तो आएंगे वो आएगा पर वो आवाज नहीं आएगी।
to see those effects coming at him in a tight way.
और
These numbers coming at us.
कट करूँ कर ली।
Therefore, after having thoroughly confused you with all the methodologies, I now tell you that in healthcare, only in healthcare, and only for a process based on a snapshot sample, that the gross segment of protein will
भाई लोटा पानी
be
पिए, चाय पिएंगे, इसके बाद नाश्ता करेंगे, फिर जाएंगे घर।
do not mention postal biostatistics. They will throw you out of the window for your study out of it. But in healthcare, walk on a process-based method, a snapshot of 20 to 50 is usually sufficient. Otherwise, it all depends on size of population, degree of accuracy required, degree of confidence, and so we decided on our sample size. X or N by using what? How to collect that? How to get a representative sample? So there are different methods. Easiest being simple and understanding. You take a simple random sampling table. Respondents who are coming in, you start giving them numbers. As per the random sampling table, you start giving up your response. Every one. Still similar is consecutive sampling. That is next 40 patients, last 50 patients, next 100 patients.
एक तो पहले इनकी आवाज नहीं समझ रही।
But that is too simple. So better method is quasi-random sampling.
सुधीर शर्मा based on verified.
Means every next patient, you have to look at the table. This is another form of the table, which is available.
ये योजना
It is for
सुधीर शर्मा योजना ना
different and 95 is global.
सुधीर शर्मा काय दिले
अगर पता चले कि मैं आ गया तो 6,000।
So let us say for a your sample size should be 278. What is your calculation? Let's say this is 200.
सुधीर शर्मा NABH Audit उनका
Population size of 1,000 goes to back. So what is quasi-random? That means 250 out of 1,000. Sample size of 250 out of a population of 1,000. That means 25%. That means 1 in 4 person gets a chance to be in the sample. So you take every 4th person walking in through the door to your sample. So you take
webinar है
number 1.
online. कामों का webinar है.
And so on and so forth. But then, if you do this day of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 2, 3 and 4 will never get a chance to be in the sample. So
उसके अभिप्राय
कौन सॉरी टर्म
Therefore, today we start the question number 1 and then 5 and then 7. You use the words that you are starting.
ग्रुप में ऐड कर दिया था सर्टिफिकेट दिया ही नहीं
When you say you start with 3 and 7 and so on. So the starting point was staggered, but the interval that is the big focus. It will be less than what's happening. No, still doesn't matter. It is stratified. If in your population of 1,000, the men to women ratio is 1:1, then in your sample also the men to women ratio should be 1:1. If you take alternate male, female. If it is 1:4 in the male population, then in your sample also the sex distribution should be 1:4. This is the best method of sampling, and that is known as stratified sampling. Other methods are individual sampling, division from January to June or January to December or so on. Two-stage sampling, that is, first you take, this is the process stage. When I told you, first you take a snapshot sample. If you understand your findings, very good, otherwise you take the largest sample. And rapid sampling, cycle sampling, we don't do. So you collect a new sample. Now you need to design your data collection. You need to remember the designing of the data collection form is going to be done by January. And the data is actually going to be entered by the apps. So the person using the data collection form is different from the person designing the data collection. So please make it simplest for people because everyone can understand. The IQ levels may vary. Please make it very, very simple. So be simplest and only essential data which fits these standards should be captured. And probability of bias is to be considered. What should it contain? It should contain the project title and the date of the audit and the date for which the data is to be collected. The period for which the data is to be collected should be mentioned. You don't want that one person falls sick and then he becomes okay and goes out and makes an effort to collect data only to realize that the input data collected. So that detail needs to be mentioned every time. And also the telephone number of the project lead or the person designing the data collection form needs to be mentioned because the person recording the data may have queries. So they should know whom they can approach and contact in case they want to have any clarification. And then of course completing the form and return to the form is complete monitoring process. This is an example of the data collection form. This is for universally important.
हो सकता है उसमें अच्छे पॉइंट नहीं किया है समझ में आया
They've got 6 criteria.
यहाँ दिखेगा तब होगा
I told you I would have preferred only 2 or 3 objective elements.
इसमें किया है
डेस्कटॉप पे दिखेगा
But see the beauty of this data collection form. 100% of the data collected is non-data. This consider only yes or no. There is no qualitative data captured. So this is a beautiful
ये एनसी जो है ना क्लोज करना बहुत डिफिकल्ट है पांचों
fact that there is too many criteria.
ये पांचों एनसी क्लोज करना बहुत डिफिकल्ट है
Data is
पूरा
100%.
डाटा बनाना है और डाटा बना के उनको प्रेजेंट करना है
तो ऑनलाइन ही सब
भाई
करना है।
डिपार्टमेंट
You
का
know, I tell
ऑनलाइन ही
you
करना है
that when you're designing the data
difficult है
form,
पेज मैनेजमेंट का दिया था सर अभी
look
वो
how
नहीं
before
दिखा है
the
सब
sequence
दिखा है
of your
प्रैक्टिकल दिखा है
नहीं नहीं पेन मैनेजमेंट का हो गया पेन मैनेजमेंट का आगे बनी आगे वो थॉमस मैडम ने एक्सेप्ट कर दिया
everything was belief about all of
लेकिन
us.
सर उसमें तो सिर्फ मैंने
There is
एक
one
सिंगल
that's
को देखा
अरे वो मैंने वो जो है ना प्राची को
हाँ,
उससे करवाया ना वो उसके हिसाब से हो गया उसने कर दिया ये देखो एक्सेप्ट कर दिया उसने ये yes sir absolutely right ये होना है ना अपन ने जो है पेन मैनेजमेंट का मैंने पहले दिन जितना पेन था ना पेशेंट को फिर दूसरे दिन कितना था तीसरे दिन कितना था, पहले दिन अपन ने क्या मैनेजमेंट किया, फिर पेन कम हुआ तो क्या ट्रीट किया, ऐसा लिख के भेज रहा है। वर्सनिंग पेन से लेके माइनर, अपने को क्या आदत है 0 1 0 1 0 1, इतना भी कोई डिलीवरी का पेन लेके आए, चाहे एब्डोमिनल सर्जरी का है, आर्थो का है, चाहे यूरो का है,
1 और 2 बस।
उसके ऊपर कभी किसी का जाता ही नहीं।
तो सर वो ऐसे ही डाल
भले अगर तीन ही पेन
नहीं, और मैंने वहाँ एडमिशन से लेके जो डिस्चार्ज का पेपर है, सिर्फ डिस्चार्ज पे पेन 0 रहेगा, बाकी सब में पेन है ना।
इसलिए उन्होंने बोला कि अलग पेज बनाओ, पेन मैनेजमेंट का हर एक पेशेंट का अलग पेज बनाओ, नहीं हर एक पेशेंट का हर एक पेन मैनेजमेंट का बनाना है और उसके अकॉर्डिंग ही करना है।
हाँ सर का दूसरी चीज़ है वो नहीं दिखाया, मैं बताऊँ होम्योपैथी का दिखाया था और वाइस सर का डायलिसिस का दिखाया था, स्ट्रोक का दिखाया था, तो मैं मेरे सामने सब बुलाया इसने तीनों का दिखाया, बाकी का नहीं दिखाया। मैं इसको
पूरा मैंने डाटा निकाला था, हैंड रिटन डेटा लिख दिया था।
आणि आता माहिती का आधी करून कोड वाईट करणार कोड वाईट स्ट्रोक चे पेशंट आला
ए एमटीवी दे डाटा confidential issue.
And subsequent to that, all papers should contain only that code number, including the investigation results.
कहाँ पे मंदिर आ गया?
The only paper
दिखाओ,
should contain
वीडियो दिखाओ,
details.
वीडियो
The
दिखाओ।
consent form. But the consent form should not be a part of the file. It should be kept in a seal with the medical superintendent and sent on a regular basis to the district attorney.
मैम बता रहे थे कि कंसेंट पे भी
So it is a good idea to follow it.
इन्फॉर्म कंसेंट टू जातिया ने क्या लिखा
Give all your
कि ऑपरेशन के दौरान बीपी कम हो सकता है, बस खत्म, कोई कॉम्प्लिकेशन नहीं लिखा।
ये तो वो बोल रहे थे मैं वो भी कर
हाँ
रहा
तो इन्फॉर्म कंसेंट बनाना है, सब कंसेंट पे फिट कराना है।
वो मतलब आप
Which they also use this.
मतलब ये क्या और कंपनी ऑर्डर किया
Always pilot test your designs where the person will be connection with the impact of the person designing. So there may be certain features which will be easy to solve. And always train your people because you want uniformity in collection of data. Remember the MCQs that we have to answer. The answer sheets, the responses have to be marked uniform. We have to black out the correct answer. Because it was lower you went, it was corrected from the computer, but here it is corrected by hand.
पकड़ के ले जाते हो उसको।
One person taking it, second person crossing it, third person circling it. The responses should be entered uniform. And mechanical procedure is entered. So how good is your data? That has to be good because everybody is making a lot of effort in it.
वो वैशाली को भी बुलाइए ना, वैशाली
Is it accurate? You don't want somebody sitting at home and correcting recording the answer. So is it relevant? If it answers yes, good. Is it accurate? Yes, good.
सर कॉल
Yes, very. Accessibility is not a problem nowadays. Accessibility is not a problem because the first three questions should be answered yes. Then we can say that the data is good. So we
मैम फोन रिसीव नहीं कर
now we need to do a data analysis so that we arrive at a conclusion at the end of the report. Here, it is permissible to take the help of a biostatistician. But there are certain calculations which are very basic and which all of us need to do. Before we start doing calculations, let us understand what are the information are we trying to extract from the data. So all that we try to extract is the absolute matter of actual practice as it is today. Which are the outliers? Which are the impermissible? So you remove the outliers.
कल क्या भी हुई
Let's see how many of the responses
चाय को
are actually meeting
बिस्किट बना यार
So there are certain very simple
जीरा बिस्किट बनाया जीरा बिस्किट
हाँ जरा बिस्किट
and these are things
नहीं,
like
मैं तो काली
leaves
बताऊँ
in
तेरे को पसंद है।
percentages or meat indication. So what actually are we trying to extract from each of them? Very simple. Number of cases meeting standard and number of cases not
अच्छा है क्या
देखिए सर
So
दिख रहा
बहुत
है
है
plus this is an outline. After that, what you get is applicable cases. Applicable cases. So this is the information that we
आयु क्या
actually need from all data that we have gathered.
किसका हाँ
When we do analysis, how we need to display, when we need to display,
कहाँ पर
we need to convey our
तो नहीं बताओ मैं तो आपको नाश्ता
when
कैसे
the
बता रहा हूँ
person goes
नहीं नहीं खत्म होने को मैं तो आपको
we need to display
सारा कुछ दे
the last understood by everyone. So one of the best methods of display are right.
मैं तो आपको
The other is
नहीं वैसा अरे नहीं मैं तो आपको सैंडविच बनाऊंगा सही हिसाब से अभी मैं खत्म हो जाएगा बात मुझे लगा आपको हाथ मत आओ फिर देखो अब मत आओ खत्म हो जाएगा मुझे लगा आप यहीं से होंगे तो मैंने बोला आपको नाश्ते अरे कुछ आप
ये नेचुरल है
brain channel was this quality business. Because those brain in this first germ of quality germinate. Where did this entire story start? Those of my friends who have some background about management, they will first take the name of Debbie. But yes, Debbie was the first quality guru of the world. But there was one person, then he used to figure out this. And that was his gentleman, what this was. Story again started with the First World War, 1946. What the sugar was the electric required by Bailey Restaurants, which was the largest manufacturer of telephones at that time. And there was a lot of static in the The telephone was the only means of communication between the soldiers and themselves behind. So each one was not able to understand what the was meant to convey. So what the sugar was built by Bailey to the art with a one-point directive that please reduce the static in our telephones. And it is said that water sugar on the 7th day of the came out with a 1.5-page document. Half a page of it was devoted to the world's first control chart. The rest of it was text about the control chart explication. That was the first quality document in the world. That is where the entire story started. Later on, what does you keep up with the PDC, SSI, and to study exam. The entire world knows the PDC cycle as the Deming to check exam. But Deming always used to call it the Stewart cycle. The difference being it was plan to study at the Stewart and to check at the Deming. Later on, of course, you went on to bring about statistics, to talk about statistical quality control. The third method of displaying that was displaying the file and the only thing, file that is a very good method of displaying. The only thing you want to understand and remember at that time is that the sectors of the file themselves give a visual impression about the percentage. So it is not enough to write the percentage of the sector, but it is a good idea to also write and actual status. So to conclude what we have learned so far about the technical aspect, identify the population characteristics, decide whether you want to look at every case of flow sample, normally you want to choose it. And for process-based clinical audits, a snapshot sample, cross-section sample of 20 to 50 is enough. And easiest to do it randomly. Summarize, do not collect too much data. Always pilot data collection form, do simple analysis, simple method. In fact, to summarize it all, always adopt the KISS approach. That is, keep it simple and simple. There is also a slide on how to pay. There are a number of ways in which to pay.
खाली चाय ना एक ही की दो है कॉफी खाली चाय ठीक है कॉफी की देंगे
Steer away from
मैंने तो काली चाय को नहीं सुना
काली चाय लाना ना दो बजे हाँ दो काली चाय बोलिए
as per what is remember the smallest detail of all responses when the coach came out was fast before the general conference and it was a very expensive so a lot of care into managing the coach. General Motors took a lot of pride in the building. So one family got a coach, and on the 10th day they sent a letter to General Motors saying that we are facing a very peculiar problem. That when the family goes for post-dinner trips, they break it, and if they buy chocolate ice cream and come back to the car will start. But if they buy vanilla ice cream, the car will not start. And this, you understand that every time vanilla it will not start, chocolate will not start. So, anybody else would probably have laughed at that. The general manager of the he said that he was the best engineer of the family. And the engineer they come to the
ग्रेड है ना वो
मैं बोल रही हूँ
same thing.
डेढ़ से भी है
Vanilla it will not start, chocolate will start.
ग्रेड के प्रोडक्ट नहीं खाते
General manager
बिस्किट में भी मैदा है
and then
बिस्किट में भी
take
मैदा है
instructions to
परमानेंट नहीं है
हाँ
If
परमानेंट नहीं है
they did that. So the explanation was that when they used to write the paper, they used to take the paper. And when they used to stop the car, it required time for the paper to arrive. Now,
पीलस नहीं
vanilla was a functioning flavor that was stored towards the front of the thing.
सर
So the
मुझे
time
एक बात
taken to
पूछनी थी
reprint vanilla
मतलब ऐसा मुझे आज तक नहीं समझा नहीं कि देखिए
thus not giving the airload
आलू भी नहीं चलते हैं ना प्याज भी नहीं
chocolate
चलती
at
है
that
ये
time was
हल्दी कैसे
slow
चलती है
and stored towards
हल्दी
the
भी तो
back
ठीक
of
है ना
जल्दी को
the
सुखा
time
देना
taken to refine chocolate back to
तो
the
ड्राई कर दो
इसीलिए चलती है ना
ड्राई करने के बाद तो उसको पीस लेते हैं पाउडर बन जाता है
इसीलिए मैंने शायद कहीं पे भी पढ़ा था तो सोच रही थी कि बहुत दिनों से आपसे
general
पूछूंगी
manager was able to maintain the integrity and reputation of his company.
आलू को कैसे सुखा नहीं सकते हैं
दूध भी नहीं चलता है लोगों में क्या दूध भी नहीं चलता ना
बहुत सारे लोग हमारे आज ज्यादा शुरू कर नमक में शक्कर में ये सब्जी में दूध में पिछले 50 सालों से
Because as long as I walk and the reason why you know walk, you
हमको
want
है ना जैसे हमारे आईटी में जैसे है वो दर्शन से है ना उसमें जैन दर्शन में बताया है ये सब वेदांत
वो
बताया
आएगा
to satisfied there is no difference between us and the cost. So always
इन्होंने कुछ मन से नहीं लाके दिया इसीलिए ऐसे हो रहा है आधा छोड़ रहे हैं आधा ये कर रहे हैं
So I cannot make sure that it makes it that is what I am. Thank you very much.
नहीं रखा हम शुगर
हाँ थैंक यू वेरी मच
I'm already a workshop with it and
मैं भी शुगर तो खाती हूँ उसको अवॉइड कर
Yes.
अभी वो भी नहीं है
What's your plan?
ये क्या पूछे?
So the participants might as well say thank you to Dr. Sudhir Sharma. He will not be joining us again.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Sugar and
Sugar. Thank you so much, sir.
खाली आहे ना इथून अच्छा काम क्या हुई
So, yes, sir, you want to say?
सर्टिफिकेट सब खाना
Yes, sir. Please carry on.
मला पण पाहिजे.
Yes, sir.
बिस्किट बहुत अच्छा लगा रे बिस्किट वाला बिस्किट बहुत अच्छा लगा एक पैकेट और डालो
सँडविच
सैंडविच
तुम्ही
जर
खाल्ला
आप लेने वाले हैं सैंडविच
भरत दिया लो ना सैंडविच
Can you see the presentation? Yes, sir. So I'm going to select it by computer. And before that, because it's let's proceed a little backwards because I would like to take an example through all the sections. Right? And Dr. Sudhir Sharma sir has set the like the foundation of the entire course, and for me to take on is going to be quite easy.
इसका भी एक घंटा चलने वाला है
Well, I must say that Dr. Sharma sir always brings out and emphasizes that which is extremely important in a very philosophical way, and I think that is what learning is all about. What I am going to do is also facilitate the learning and try and leave you with few things which I hope you will remember, a few salient points, which will help you in carrying out clinical audits and implementing a clinical audit program. Okay, so now we're talking about stage 2, which is setting criteria and standards, and we'll be discussing here what are audit standards, how do we make them, and how we set them. Okay? So what are audit standards? Now, clinical audit is by definition standards based, sometimes referred to as criteria based, right? And standards are more specific than objectives. So, sir has discussed setting the aims and the objectives. There will be a bit of a repetition throughout for ease of understanding. Seek to ensure that the best possible care is provided given available resources. And they are based upon available evidence. Very, very important that they are based upon available evidence. So standard is basically an explicit statement describing the quality of care to be achieved, which is definable and measurable. You have to be able to define the standard, you have to be able to measure it. So what is the difference between aim, objectives and standards? Aim will define the overall purpose of the audit. It is broken down into smaller objectives. So you have a broad aim where you have selected your audit topic and you want to either enhance, improve, reduce, whatever. Right? And so that is the overall purpose, and then you break it down into smaller objectives, and these are written as either specific tasks to be undertaken or as the different aspects of the quality that the project will address. Right? So objectives are smaller portions of the aim, right? And what are standards? So standards are basically explicit statements describing the quality of care to be achieved, which is definable and measurable. So standards will essentially be definable, they will be measurable. Right? While objectives are objective no doubt, but here the standards make them measurable. They are more specific than objectives, and very, very importantly, they are evidence based. So you have an audit topic and you define the aim, then you might have multiple objectives, and each objective may have n number of standards. Okay? So you, for example, objective 1 may have 1 standard, 2 may have 2 standards, 3 may again have only 1 standard. So let's try to understand standards. The first thing is that when we write down standards, they should be what are called as SMART standards. So SMART stands for S is for specific, that is clear, unambiguous and target. They should be measurable. They should focus on information that is available if the audit is undertaken. If the data cannot be collected, the standard will not be useful. They should be agreed upon by all
delivering that aspect of care, they should be relevant to the area of care being audited, and they should be theoretically sound. They should be based on evidence about best practice, reviewed and updated as new evidence becomes available. Okay, so specific stands for, so S is for clear, unambiguous, target B, measurable, then agreed upon, and they should be pertinent. No point doing something which is more applicable to the UK or US and doesn't really apply to our area of work in our country, in India. Right? And they have to be based on evidence. They should be theoretically sound. Should get updated as and when new evidence becomes available. Please remember that there are other definitions for standard and criteria, but what we are following is essentially NICE guidelines, the UK guidelines. So a standard, now how do we make a standard measurable? There are two components. One is a criteria, the other is a target. Okay? So what is the criteria now? So audit standard will have audit criteria plus target plus exceptions and the source of evidence. That is how you pen down a standard. What is the criteria? What is our target? What is the exception as far as the standard is concerned, and therefore you will not include it in your data analysis? And what is your source of evidence? So audit criteria will quantify the practice addressed by the objective, describing in a measurable way what care should be delivered. And they should be derived from the evidence base. So describe what care should be delivered in a measurable way. Now, criterion forms the main body of the standard. It is a clear and precise statement of care. It uses words and phrases which mean that it is measurable and indicates the boundary of measurement. That is, for example, a time frame and who it involves. This is also known as a yardstick. The boundary is known as the yardstick. Okay? So, criterion is the main body of the standard. It has to be clear and precise. There are words and phrases which are used which mean that it is measurable, and it essentially indicates the boundaries of measurement, right? And which are known as yardstick. So criterion is statement of what is being measured plus a yardstick. And yardstick provides the measurement boundary. Whereas the target defines the level of performance considered acceptable in relation to the chosen criteria. It is expressed as a percentage. Yeah. So this is how it will appear. That you have criteria in the statement of what is being measured. So that will be a phrase along with the boundaries that are there, and the percentage of that has to be achieved. That is the target. So that will make a standard. So 95% of, for example, 95% of children referred to the department will be seen by a member of the team within 2 weeks of the referral being received. So what is the criterion here? What is the target? What is the yardstick? Anyone wants to attempt?
Seeing the children who are referred is the criteria. Target is 95%.
Yes, and yardstick?
2 weeks.
Yes,
2
2
weeks
weeks.
of the reference.
Yes. So target is 95%. Criterion is children referred to the department will be seen by member of the team within 2 weeks. What is the yardstick? Within 2 weeks of the referral being seen. Okay? So how do we go about setting standards? Right? We have to have a guidelines and protocols. We should do a literature search. It should always be based on the strongest, most up-to-date evidence of what constitutes best practice. As I've already said, they should be smart, right? They should be specific, measurable, agreed upon, relevant, and evidence-based. And try to have the best possible evidence available. However, there are times when we may not, if it's a local practice, for example, we may not really find too much of evidence, and then you have to go by the evidence of your experience, right? And then facilities, the same randomized control trials, results of well-conducted non-RCT clinical studies, expert committee reports, personal experience and opinion. But the best ones are systematic review, then comes this results of randomized control trials, well-conducted non-RCT clinical studies, that means you get to look at evidences from journals which have a lot of, they verify their indexing information.
अगर ये डायरेक्टर लोग अगर अच्छे से समझ लेना तो बहुत बड़े लेवल पे हो जाएगा.
Typically they want to be fantasized. So there are a lot of journals who publish anything that is given to them provided they are paid for it, right? So and they do not even follow a proper peer review process, right? So and do not study validate whether the study design is appropriate, content is appropriate, etc. So you can also look up, for example, expert committee reports, even let us say for us, guidelines from the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India, and then of course personal experience and opinion. And it can also, you can do it by sitting together, the entire team which is going to do the audit can sit together and do some brainstorming and then immediately sit together, look at the standards and finalize them as to what evidence is available and finalize it. So this slide just shows you how you can look at sources of evidence for clinical audit. We could have international, for example, WHO, worldwide best practice, and they are well known for their safe surgery checklist. Suppose you want to do a clinical audit on the implementation of the surgical safety checklist, or whether the use of the surgical safety checklist has actually led to safer surgeries. Right? You can look at national evidence, for example, NICE guidelines. Then digital evidence into national standard. NICE has produced over 1,000 guidelines since 2000. Local standards such as best practices often agree locally in discrimination or documents protocols or even SOPs. Look at the literature, often best practices have not been formally agreed upon because everyone has their own style of working and managing patients. Literature searches can tell us what is the current thinking. Like for example, managing hypertension, managing diabetes. Now there are ages old problems and people must be, whether they are following the current good practices or not. Right? Then occasionally we have no agreement on best practice. Experts can get together and agree on what is the best practice and arguably create the evidence. Right? Okay, now where guidelines, protocols do not exist or are not updated, literature search can be done to identify the best practice. Okay, so systematic reviews of randomized control trials, results of singles, as I just discussed, expert committee, winner. So when we use guidelines, recommendations of clinical practice guidelines can be used to develop criteria and something. And there are other methods, we will not get into that. Right? So these are some useful resources. Now let us look at how we will set targets and why do we need to set targets. So information about what other teams have achieved can indicate how well a unit is performing in relation to others and encourage the exchange of ideas about how practice can be improved. And literature review we may not find any evidence, but failure to reach a set performance level must be examined carefully. So we need our targets. To have, the entire exercise about quality improvement. How will you measure whether your quality has actually improved or not? When we set targets, we should have realistic and attainable levels. And the following factors should be considered: clinical importance, practicability, acceptability. Then comes exceptions. Now these are justifiable reasons for not providing the level of care specified. For example, it is not a failure on the part of the organization if a patient chooses not to accept care. So you have recruited the patient, right? And into your clinical audit, but if the patient doesn't come for follow-up, chooses not to go through with that particular procedure, there's not much we can do, and then we have to exclude the patient. Consensus on the
these
बहुत सारी
will
फाइल्स
do
में
the final analysis will not consider
पेशेंट
specific
डामा
cases.
जाता है तो ट्रीटमेंट
Right,
कंप्लीट
so exceptions are there established for not providing the level of care
बहुत सारी
provided.
फाइल्स
Now coming to the source of evidence. The source promise most up-to-date evidence for what constitutes the best practice. So this is an example of how standards and criteria can be set. So this audit was this is a clinical audit of overnight transfusions in 8 New Zealand hospitals. Right, which was basically the purpose was the overall aim was to reduce the number of overnight blood transfusions. Mainly because that is from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. because everybody knows that in night shift the staff is lesser and the staff is also tired, whatever, even though they have arrived at 8 o'clock, but then there are other factors and you really do not, even patient attendants are sleeping, patients are sleeping, and you do not want to transfuse unless it is really necessary during that time frame. Added to that are the facts that, lighting is poor and so on and so forth. So, the first criteria, first standard, serial number 1 is the first standard. Number of red cell units transfused between hours of 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. at 8 large hospitals in New Zealand over 4 weeks. And our target is that there should be 0. Right? And for all out, what all do we want to capture? Start time of transfusion, day of transfusion, clinical speciality, availability of products, delays at the blood bank. So whenever a transfusion is happens between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m., all of these things should be documented. So what is our target as far as transfusion between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. is 0%. And what are the exceptions? When will you transfuse between at night? So the high activity areas such as emergency departments, intensive care units, high dependency units, operating theatre, birthing units, and delivery suites. Because there you cannot say no. We'll schedule have an elective transfusion during the day. It's an emergency and the patient has to be transfused. What is the evidence? Australian and New Zealand Society for Blood Transfusion. The next standard is about clinical appropriateness of each unit of transfuse between hours of 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. Right? And what is your target? It is at 100%. That we have to transfuse rationally. What is the evidence? It is NHS. Then the third standard is about the median time interval between taking either the pre-transfusion hemoglobin sample or the pre-transfusion group and spleen sample and commencing the transfusion is within the turnaround time of the test. Target is 100%, exceptions none, and source of evidence is institutional policy. What is the turnaround time for hemoglobin estimation? So based on the first standard was based on Australasian standards. The second one on NHS. Third standard is based on institutional policy. Duration of transfusion extending over beyond 4 hours, right? So again, 0% and the evidence is
maximum
the
4 hours.
Australian and New Zealand Society. The patient's vital signs are measured and recorded before the start, 15 minutes after the start, at the end of each transfusion episode, and our target is 100%. Adverse transfusion reactions are documented in the patient records and reported to the blood bank.
ये देखो ये अपने को करना पड़ेगा ये वाला।
So these are the 6 standards. So I hope you are clear about standards.
अभी वो फॉर्म भरना है भेजना है ना, कल डाला था ना मैंने ग्रुप पे। जितने भी फॉर्म आते हैं ना ब्लड बैंक से वो सब अपने को भरना है, रिएक्शन हो या ना हो। पीछे साइड में जो लिखा है ना रिएक्शन वाला वो भर के देना। मैडम ने बोला है
all stakeholders from the outset when we are trying to find, having decided on an audit topic, we have to involve all stakeholders from the outset and review the evidence base, set smart standards, keep the project focused and do not set too many standards, especially when you just started doing clinical audit. So you look at 1 or 2 standards and then move on from there, and then when you go to cycle 2, cycle 3 or re-audit, you can select more standards. Okay. Now, I'll look at the exercises at the end if you please. I just received them from Vikash. Right now, I'll come back. Now, stage 3, sir, is discussed. So I have to discuss 4 and 5. I'll come to 4 and 5.
guidelines, you can easily Google and get them. And there's some 7, 8, I would say, handouts of like 3 to 4 pages each, where they discuss various aspects of clinical audits. And the best thing is that and they're not too heavy to read. You can read them at your bedtime, or you have a break in between while working. Just go through them. The best thing is that they even provide audit templates. Of course, they're for their use, but on how to submit an audit proposal and how to go about doing a data collection sheet, and then how to submit a re-audit proposal, and then finally how to go about presenting your audit. Okay? So try to and submit your report. So now then comes making and sustaining improvements. So this is the 5th stage. Right? Now what are we going to, when we want to make and sustain improvements, the first thing is you want to communicate the findings. You want to implement. So what stage have we reached so far? We have an audit topic has been decided, right? That is identifying the problem or issues. The criteria and standards have been set, and then we have collected the data, we have observed the practice and done our data collection, and then we have gone ahead to introduce interventions, and after that we have made improvements. After making improvements, we have to see whether the improvements have been sustained or not, right? And we want to again re-audit for that purpose, right? So we have to communicate the findings. We have to go about bringing in change, and bringing in change is not like you tell people that tomorrow you have to start doing. It's not like children in school, and even children in school these days are very smart. They just do what they want to do. Right? So it essentially involves changing behaviors of individuals, and a lot of soft skills are required when you want to change behaviors. They will also, how do you promote a successful audit, and how do you monitor and evaluate the change? How do you maintain and reinforce the change, and then finally implement? So how will we communicate findings? One is we have to be clear about what are the outcomes of the audit. If the possibility is that deficiency of care is recognized and followed by specific solutions that are proposed. However, it may not be possible every time, and even then we have to appreciate the education impact, because doing or carrying out the audit itself, we looked at the literature, we looked at what is the evidence base, where should we be, right? And in any case, it's great if we are where we should be, right? So we've learned about it, that this is where we stand, and our confidence will be higher. So who should be informed about the audit findings? One is whose practice was examined. Those people, all stakeholders basically should be informed, and primarily those whose practice was being observed, because if you want to bring in change, they are the ones who have to be taken on, who are on the clinical audit project team, so they have to be informed. Who should be involved in making changes to improve the particular aspect of care in question, right? And who would be involved, So those who are going to ultimately bring in the change have to know what were the audit findings. Now audit reports could be passive, they could be active. Passive methodology of disseminating results is that you just prepare a report and you send it. Now the problem there is you do not know if anybody has read the report. So there's always a 50-50 in this day and age where there's information overload. You half the time you miss critical WhatsApp messages because there's so many other non-sensitive ones that you ended up looking at, and then you just put it all aside. And then next day somebody says, did you see my message? And then you realize, oh my God. And similarly, mails. Now mails also we know what is happening. Those of you, I use Gmail, so apart from my institutional mail, institutional mail is cluttered with daily reports and things like my QI data, etc. Right? And therefore sometimes you end up missing, and then everybody wants to put a copy to you. If you position, in a leadership position, or the subordinate staff or anybody who's communicating with the subordinates, everyone wants to put a copy. So ultimately, in a day, if you spend or 15 critical messages you want to look at, get lost in some 15 messages, right? So audit reports, though a great idea, tend to be passive, and you do not know if somebody has even read them. Second, if anyone has any questions or suggestions, they cannot get communicated. So it's not a proactive process. The other one is discussion of results, where you sit together with the concerned stakeholders and you discuss the results. Right? And you can indicate what were the challenges, what are the issues, and what you want to propose. If you want to propose something, again, what do you foresee will be the difficulty, and you seek suggestions as well from the team which has conducted the audit, as well as if you want something from your management, then you need to have them on board, right? So what should the report have? And like I just told you, please refer to the University of Bristol handouts. There should be a title page. Which should include background, aims, objectives and standards, and the methodology of carrying out the audit, along with results, conclusion, action plan, references, and any annexure that might be there. The action plan should include what needs to change, how change could be achieved, and what actions need to be in place, who needs to take these actions, when the proposed actions will begin, and how these actions will be monitored and when. Now we're going to assess whether actions that have been taken have achieved the desired outcome or not. Right? So these are the various components of an action plan. What needs to change, how to change, who will take these actions, when will it begin, and who will monitor, how will it be monitored, and when to assess whether we have the desired outcome or not. So then comes implementing change. So first one is communicating, the next step is implementing the change. After concluding that this is what has to be done. So the most important part of the audit cycle is making a change. Right? Making change. A clinical audit does not result in improved services and increased patient-based safety. It's a waste of resources. And remember that it is a resource-intensive activity. Right? You have to take out time from your routine to carry out a clinical audit. Most of the time it's going to be doctors and nurses who are doing it. And both have doctors per se don't have time, and nurses are hard pressed for time to do this kind of an activity. We know there is a shortage of nurses, right? So we better know that what we are doing is relevant, and what we are doing is going to bring in some change, and it has to lead to quality improvement. So fully understand the fundamental reasons for the shortfalls identified by the audit. And this can be done by various mechanisms such as root cause analysis, fishbone analysis, and process mapping, etc. You want to understand these tools, you will have to, I would suggest that you attend the workshop by NABH CQI, that is continual quality improvement. So there was famous saying, change or else change will change you. Okay? So no one, and remember that no one should fix all. So you really cannot prescribe any kind of a change. It has to be contextual. It has to be relevant to your own setting. No point reading up what somebody in UK did and US did. Okay, see whether you can do it in your setting. If not, you have to find your own place. Right? Diagnostic analysis should be undertaken before selecting the most appropriate strategies for implementing change. So when we implement change, we should look at what are the problem areas, what standards are not being met, what are the potential causes of the problem. For example, lack of resources, inadequate knowledge or skills, lack of procedures, etc. Which of these are most likely? How could these problems be overcome? That is, ideas for change and which solutions are most likely to be successful? Whose support will be needed for change to be implemented? And develop a clinical audit action plan. And then yeah. So when implementing, we should know what are the problem areas specifically, and what are the potential causes of the problem. How could they be overcome? Whose support do we need? So sometimes we need to turn to our management for extending, whether it is manpower resources, whether you need to talk to a few other departments. Right? And so we identify whose support is required, and then have an action plan, and then we introduce it, and then. So the change process has a few steps. The first is initiation, the process leading up to the change. Implementation is the first change, experiences of change. And continuation is that the change has become embedded. Right? And so when we want to introduce change, these are various tools that are there. Get a feel of particular change and plan strategy. So Tropics is one such tool. The first one is what are the time scales that we are looking at. And when we want to introduce change, then how much time, short term or long term? What will be needed? What are these quantifiable? Does anyone see this issue as the same way? And is there evidence, and does anybody see that if somebody done it in another place, can we also do it similarly? Who's interested in making change happen? Because nothing can be done unless somebody is interested. You can look around with a stick, you'll get your job done once or twice, but the next round again you'll be chasing people, and you may or may not be able to succeed. Define who is the power, because this person is he or she is the person that people want to listen to. And who is driving the proposal, internal or external source. Externally generated for ideas for change. That is for a different, that is from a different organization, etc. can also be assessed. So these are a few tools for change analysis. One is stakeholder analysis. You understand where the lead stand with proposed changes, identify the most appropriate approach, have a discussion, and identify this approach looks fine. And by and large, it works out well. Force field analysis is a visual mapping of forces that are likely to help or hinder, identify pros and cons, and develop strategies to reduce the impact of restraining forces and strengthen supporting forces. It also relates to an individual, staff, group, or the organization as a whole. Okay? Now, we must break down the change into manageable tasks and achievable targets, because if you've done a fishbowl, you need to bring in some 15-20 things. But then if you start doing everything together, it will become next to impossible to implement change. Identify the most important ones and the ones that will have a higher impact, and then think about, start working on that. Must inform the staff about what is going on and consulting them for their own ideas, because the best solutions are always lying in the grassroots worker who's engaged in the activity day in and day out. And they should always be involved whenever we want to make a change, because the suggestions are really good. Training and development, for example, organizing briefings and workshops. What are the key elements of initiating change? Do people recognize the need for change? Right? And when we submit the audit report, people should be able to assess the data and figure out that there is a problem here. And sometimes you might need to talk to people and tell them that, listen, we have a problem here. We believe that we don't have a problem, but actually when we looked at this data, we need to we need to change a few of our habits. Willingness to change varies from person to person, whether you want, it could be for short term or longer term. The proposal may have to be sold and get people on board and take them on board, say this is what I'm doing and this is why I'm doing it. A different stimuli when it comes to thinking about change. So we are trying to lead all the stakeholders to a shared vision of the future with facts and figures. Can use the reward or penalty. Reward usually works out better. Right? Penalty nobody likes, and the common response is going to be that we already work so much, and for doing all this extra work, is anybody going to pay us? At least for the lower level staff, that is very important. Right? So try to strike a balance, and if somebody is grossly negligent, yes, consider penalty. But don't always do it, because when you push it too far, people might just come and fill up forms and give it to you without actually having gone through the entire audit process. And you have to involve and convince opinion leaders. So the implementing change has to be planned, broken out into manageable tasks and achievable targets. Should be communicated. We should also be able to address behavior change, and we must always run a pilot. Whenever we decided that you want to get change based on a finding of data analysis, what change we want to bring in, always do a pilot with only 1 or 2 patients, and then because that in itself will tell you, we might come up with various things that maybe you miss 1 or 2, maybe you could have 1 or 2 other standards, some aspects it has been missed. Right? Then maybe your data collection pool is not capturing the information that you need to capture, etc. Right? So always pilot and then root. Then comes changing behaviors. So changing behaviors requires a lot of soft skills. This has to be done at the organizational level, individual level and the group level. Organizational level, group level and individual level. Then it will come down to the individual. So there will be driving forces like, like patient pressure, national policy, demands from referring doctors or foreign food taxes, etc. And there will always be restraining forces like individuals may have a fear of increased workload, may be concerned about staff and staffing and weak, loss of control over work patterns, and at the organization level there might be a resistant culture and also lack of resources and rigid structure. Like all of these can come to play. So when we want to bring the change to a group, there are theories of social influence and conformity. There will always be a minority which might resist, right? So these are the stages of individual change. Pre-contemplation, then you contemplate and think about, what can be done. Start preparing yourself to begin with the change and then actually implement it and then finally maintenance of the change. Now, how do we go about promoting a successful audit? We discussed all the exercises at the end. So what do you think are barriers for successful audit? Let's hear from you.
सर चले फिर जाएंगे आप
आवाज तो पहले आप ही पर जो वर्ड्स है ये है वो है
Anyone also like
बोलते जा रहे हैं अपन कितना गेन कर
non-cooperation with the engagements who are involved in real participants? Yes. Then lack of resources, yes. Lack of data. Yeah, so we don't, data collection tool is not capturing the data. Right? So we can have a problem. Or data side. Sorry? Absolutely. In fact, the current problem that almost all hospitals which are got accredited are facing is that, how to go about doing clinical audits is not taught to physicians in their training or nurses in their training. And therefore now all struggling and they're afraid to do it. There's a fear of the unknown and half the people think that this is probably like, research and it's going to take a lot of time. Yes, organization culture actually management. Like a quality coordinator or quality manager cannot really push clinicians into doing clinical audits. If there is a culture of quality improvement, and that's how you want to in the training of clinicians, right? Showing them data, showing them examples, that this is how, these are the studies which are being done, and this is what we found. Right? So, and address that culture. Yes. So lack of resources, lack of expertise in project design and analysis, lack of an overall plan for audit, poor relationships between professional groups or agencies and within teams. In most organizations, there is this problem. And again, this is a cultural issue. So especially for the people actually can work in silos, And when you want to analyze audit, you need teams which are working on this. And get a professional teams which work on clinical audits. Similarly, if you do not have good relationship between nurses and doctors, again there are issues which they will act as barriers. Organizational problems such as lack of a supportive relationship between clinicians and managers. Right, so how do you identify barriers to change? Well, first thing is to interview key staff and or users, talk to them and ask them, are there any issues that you're likely to face in what you're proposing? Should be discussed at a team meeting. Observation of patterns of work, who are moving around when the audit forms are being filled up. Identification of the care pathway. See pathway and try to get people aligned with our thinking. Facilitate team meetings with the use of brainstorming of fishbowl diagrams. You try to identify using tools, quality improvement tools like fishbowl diagrams.
Thank you, sir.
What can promote a successful audit? As I emphasize and re-emphasize that sound leadership can make a huge difference. Right? For example, in my own organization, I think I would say that I really understood the value of why are clinical audits important. And there are 2-3 organizations you will find that even interns, resident doctors are encouraged to do clinical audits. One is CMC Vellore, for example, the other one is Amrita Coaching. So their students are encouraged, and in fact in my own organization, now that the MC has come up with these selective postings where students are supposed to stay with us for at least 15 days at a stretch. So last year, in fact, over a month we received 2 batches. We could actually make our students conduct 15 clinical audits, which they presented in front of different stakeholders, including the dean. Right? So sound leadership which understands why this is important, that this is not a theoretical exercise. It actually leads to quality improvement, and not only does it improve quality, it also sensitizes whenever somebody does an audit. One of the things that happens is that because of this sensitization itself, people start changing their practices. Right? So leadership, conducive, supportive organizational environment and organizational culture, a well-managed audit program. Right? You need to have a structure in place which is managing the audit program. Right? So you need there has to be, it might be a good idea to have an audit committee, though it is not prescribed by NABH, there is no prescription there, but it helps because in the committee you will need to have somebody from the top management. It could be a medical superintendent, it could be a medical director, right? But somebody has to be there because they should give you a go-ahead for your audit proposal and also understand how it is going to affect us and are we interested in it. Right? Sometimes, somebody's imagination may run amok and then I want to do this because this is what others are doing and I think it's time we did this. Whether it is contextual and relevant. So there you need the leadership to help you decide. Then structures and systems to support audit, including mechanisms to make data collection easier. So suppose you are using the EHR. Suppose you use computer systems for various activities, maybe medication management. So again you need support, you need a mechanism, you need to save time. There is no time, nobody has time these days. Right? So you need a structure which you just put in a request and you get your data. Right? And you can very well then, getting data, collecting data is the most important thing. And if you are able to get it through your IT system, that means 90% of your work is done or 80% is done, which you are going to depend on others to do. Allocation of resources. Suppose there is a heart-based cardiac team or a neuro team, but they want to do a stroke audit. Now a neurosurgeon, neurophysician moving around collecting data is unlikely to happen. So maybe some medical officers can do, maybe some nurses can do. So so this is about manpower, right? Allocation of resources. Addressing a range of, then you collected your data and you don't know how to analyze it. More importantly, you just don't have the time. So sir mentioned SPSS, various tools are there. One is you have to be savvy and you may not really have time and you've done the audit and for 6 months you're not able to discuss the data because you've not had time to look at it. You've not had time to analyze it. And I know for sure that people are able to do the activity. When it comes down to data analysis and actually writing up the report, there is a delay. Addressing a range of issues important to the organization and individual clinicians and giving adequate attention to all stages of the audit. Changing organizational culture. So how do we change organizational culture? Staff has to be prepared to report errors or near misses which the organization analyzes and provides feedback on any action being taken. The culture should be just and the staff should be able to trust the organization to distinguish acceptable from unacceptable behavior. The culture is flexible, respecting the skills and abilities of frontline staff and allowing them to take control. And the culture should be prepared to learn and has a will to implement necessary major reforms. Right? So these are important. So So the organization which is ready to report, a reporting culture which is just is trust. I mean, you don't. This entire activity does not become an activity in blaming and accusing people and talking about who's working how in different areas. No, we are looking at quality improvement. The person is not important. The system is, right? And everyone has to be ready to learn. So appropriate organizational development will occur with cultural change, for sure. Adequate training. Now cultural change itself may not be enough. So okay, I want to learn, and my bosses, super bosses are all encouraging me to learn. Okay, go ahead, do something. But if I don't know how to do it, what is the purpose? So at least training has to be there. Like all of you are attending this training program today. I mean, if not anything, it will get you started. And organizational structure. Okay, so this was about implementing change. Then next comes monitoring and evaluating the change. So we have to go about looking at post-intervention data for assessing and maintaining the improvements. Now the process will be sample selection, information collection and analysis, modification of any of the audit plan or additional intervention in performance target is not reached, and how do we go about doing it? Continuation of change and preventing failure. How do we do that? One is we should have a multi-professional or a multidisciplinary audit team. What do you understand by what is the difference between multi-professional and multidisciplinary?
Disciplines are of the same profession. All disciplines, few disciplines coming under one profession. Different department people are coming under a.
Yes, please continue.
Multi-professional means maybe person working in multiple professions.
Yes, multiple means nursing, physiotherapy, medical, dental, etc. And disciplines will be like even in dentistry you might have dental, you may have orthodontics and so on, right? Medicine, of course, the surgery, medicine, this, that, and all. Right? Okay. Now, why do we need to do audit? It's simple. You want to know, one is whether your intervention has led to any change or not. And you want to look at what frequency do you want to do it. Right? And what can happen really is, so you may have audit cycle 1, 2, 3. And what you will realize is you bring in change. It's a typical case that there's always a possibility that there will be complacency and your performance again dips. It's very easy to go back to your habits. Right? And also you want to see whatever change you have brought in. Has it had any result or not? Is your intervention adequate? Right? So continuation of change and preventing failure. Allow time for changes to embed before re-audit. Collect a second set of data. Analyze the re-audit data. Feedback the re-audit results and discuss whether the practice has improved with the same group. So when you re-audit, what are the possibilities? It's possible that all standards are met. If yes, you repeat clinical audit process at a later date to ensure that it is maintained. Some of the standards may not be met, right? So then what do we do? After action has been implemented, repeat data collection only for those standards not met in the short term. If that is also not the case, all or most of the standards were not met, then after action has been implemented, repeat the entire clinical audit process. If not, then conclusions could not be reached and maybe the standards were not clear. So review and modify the standards and repeat the entire clinical audit. So these are the possibilities as far as the audit is concerned, or findings of the audit are concerned. So there are other tools for sustaining improvement like clinical performance indicators, monitoring errors, monitoring adverse incidents and significant event audit. Now how do you evaluate the audit quality? This can be done by using checklists, by using reviews, feedback, benchmarks and standardized and evidence-based practice. Now how do we maintain and reinforce the environment. So I'll give you it's 5 o'clock. I'll give you a 5-10 minute break in case you want to quickly get a cup of tea or coffee, and we'll get back with that.
नहीं मैं जलना चौक में
Okay.
आपके जो आगे कमर चौक में मिली तो चलेगा।
Thank you, ma'am.